So who has the best academy in the world? People say Chelsea, Dortmund have a great one, Ajax maybe, but I actually think it's Benfica, and here's why. In March of 2023, CIES Football Observatory said that Benfica was the most profitable youth academy in world football, and they said they earned about 336 million since 2015 through their academy alone. Second on that list was Real Madrid with just over 300 million, and we just have to look at the players they brought through in the last decade really. You got Bernardo, Silva, Ruben, both for Man City. You got Goncalo Ramos at PSG at the moment. You have got João Cancelo, former Man City at Barcelona, and you've also got Antonio Silva at the moment, one of the best promising young defenders in the world who is currently starting for Benfica. But it's easy to see the end result for Benfica, but their talent factory is what they call the academy. They spend about 10 to 12 million euros per year on it. When you compare it to, let's say Premier League clubs who are just cancelling their academy completely because they don't see it financially viable anymore, Benfica, it's maybe the best profitable business they have at the moment. And in 2006, Benfica legend Eusebio opened the Seashore Training Centre just outside the city of Lisbon, where around 90 young boys train and live. And the training centre has 90 pitches, 20 dressing rooms, and a 360 football simulator. You know, you'll see the things of Dortmund, and I believe Ajax have one, where you're in a bit of a zone, a bit of a square, and balls fire out at you, have to hit targets, and it's very high tech. But despite the training centre in Lisbon, they also have 4 more centres across Portugal, and this is basically to find the best talent across the entire nation, because in England, Category 1 clubs are only restricted to signing players within a 90-minute drive from their academy under the age of 14, whereas those rules don't apply in Portugal. Therefore, Benfica can basically pick a lot of players in northern Portugal, in central Portugal, and not just the southern capital. But a lot of academies do get in kids very young, which people might criticise. A 6-year-old shouldn't really be in a football academy, in my opinion. However, it seems to be working for Benfica because it's the way they treat the players when they're there. I think a lot of academies, like maybe Chelsea, they just pick up so many people in the London area, and then there's a lot tossed aside because it's so competitive, and they have 500 plus players throughout each year, and it's just never going to really work. However, from what I've read with Benfica, a player like Antonio Silva, like I said, who's starting for Benfica at the moment, 20 years old and one of the most promising prospects in the world at the moment, he struggled with homesickness because he lived in northern Portugal, and he struggled basically moving down south without his family. And Benfica actually decided to postpone him a year, put him back up north, let him live with his family, talk to a psychologist, and also train with a local club who had ties to Benfica. And then the next year, he was able to come down a lot more mentally stronger. And it worked both for Silva and Benfica. Even Pedro Marquez, the technical director of the academy, says, "We don't buy the best under-16 or the best under-17 prospects in Europe or in the world. Our way is getting in contact with the players at a very young age and introducing them to Benfica." And I think this is a really good point because a lot of teams don't have identity. This is the thing with Man United, you'll hear it so much at the moment. Whereas I think with Benfica, they try to drip how they want the players to play from such a young age. But also to make a good balance, Felipe Coelho, the Benfica under-19 coach, said, "I think it's important to have guidelines but not to overcoach or damage talent," which I think is a fantastic way of looking at it, because if you do have a system, you want players to be able to basically get fed into the first team. However, if you just coach them so regimentedly, when you're 13 years old, you should be wanting to play like Vinicius Jr. or Mbappe. You want to try skills, you want to do that, which I believe helps develop your game. And I think if a lot of coaches are just trying to be, you need to run here, you need to play left back, you can't go outside of your position, you have to do what I say, and you don't let them somewhat express themselves at a young age, then I think it will harm the development, which I think is a fantastic thing what Benfica don't do. What I also find such a fantastic move by Benfica is that they try to move each player up at a year group so they can play, at a higher level basically. However, this also gives them the ability to push players even further or drop players back a bit. For example, with a Bernardo Silva, Rodrigo Magalhães, the technical coordinator for the academy, said Bernardo Silva was a wonderful player at under 9, 10 and 11, and he even said he was like Superman. But he had problems and he was very skinny, as we can see Bernardo is quite today. He said it was difficult for him to play under 15, 16 and 17 football, so it was able to drop him back years without, hampering his development, because if he was playing 1 or 2 years up, and if he was playing against boys who were 14, 15, who had developed 6'2", absolutely built, and Bernardo Silva at that time, well still now, but at that time was probably very skinny, he was able to play with people his age or maybe a bit younger, and he also could develop his technical skills while also not getting, one, disheartened, two, injured, and also three, he could just continue his development through the academy. And what is such a benefit for Benfica, as Spanish teams and other Portuguese teams, that they have a B team who play in the league below. And I think when you're comparing this to the Premier League, because that's what I know a lot more, the English football, they have to loan players out to Championship, League One, League Two, National League sides, and it's not really instilling the system that they want to play, because all these players are going off to different parts of the country and they're playing different systems under different managers. They might be picking up different bad habits, good habits, you never know. But with Benfica, they can control all the youth players in a very competitive league in the second division in Portugal. And I do think this will help players flourish more, because if you're a 17-year-old from Man City playing for Gillingham, let's say, you might be more restricted because the coach doesn't know you as much. He might think you're a bit of a flair player and you can't offer too much to the team. You might get less minutes. You might get bullied by the experienced players because, they're not used to it. They're not used to having a flash young player. However, if you've got 20 or 30 young 18 to 22-year-olds in the Benfica B team, they all know each other from a very young age. The cohesion's there, and all the manager and the coaches know them. So I think just the chemistry between the squad will be a lot better than them just going on loan to different Portuguese clubs. But I think the intentions from the academy is partly why they succeed so much. Because with other squads, maybe like a Chelsea, for example, it feels like they want to turn a profit. And there's completely nothing wrong with that, because if you invest something, you do want to see a profit on that. However, it seems like Benfica have a bit more of an emotional connection to it. As Magles has said, he said his aim is to have 6 or 7 players to regularly play in the first team, to win the Champions League, and for 1, 2 or 3 of them to win the Ballon d'Or. And we've seen prospects potentially win the Ballon d'Or for Benfica. Ruben Dias has been fairly close. I mean, he's not going to win it. João Felix won the Golden Boy in 2019. And there's a lot of promising young players that are going to be world stars, if not already, from the Benfica Academy. And it just shows with the talent centres up and down Portugal that Benfica do have a lot more talent, because Goncalo Ramos was found in Faro, Antonio Silva was found in northern Portugal, in Viseu, and it just shows that if they didn't have those talent centres up and down the country, then a Porto might have taken them, or an Braga might have taken them, or another team who have a lot of credibility in Portugal can, catch them in their net instead of Benfica bring them down to Lisbon. And it's even the culture within the academy, because let's not forget, they're kids at the end of the day. They're not fully developed yet, and they need emotional support, and that's apparently what they get in abundance. They always remember to get them stuff like birthday cakes. They pick their roommates very carefully, because if you pick 2 clashing personalities, they might not get on at that age, and it's going to cause friction. And apparently from Marquez, he says they want to be like parents when their actual parents aren't around. And it's even seeing past technical traits and seeing mental traits from players, because a player like Ruben Dias, who in my opinion is one of the best centre-backs in the world, helped Man City get a treble last season and is just a fantastic player. Apparently he actually wasn't that good of a player in relative terms to other players in the academy, but it was actually his characteristics and his charisma that helped him. It's been quoted saying Dias was like a general, and you just saw the way he communicated with his teammates. He was just a leader. Everyone paid attention to him. And it's not just that Benfica makes all the money from their youth academy. They're fantastic recruiters, because as we've seen, they bought Enzo Fernandez in the summer 2022 from River Plate for about, 15 million? And then later sold him for 100 plus million 6 months later to Chelsea. Likewise with Darwin Núñez, he joined in 2020 for about 21 million, and then 2 years later he joined Liverpool for about 85 million. So they're fantastic profit makers, not just in the academy, but just also on the transfer market. I just think it shows when you have a well-intentioned youth academy that it can really flourish with the right guidance and the right style of play and the right people, because as I've seen personally with a lot of youth academies in England, it doesn't seem like they have the best intentions. A lot of big clubs seem to play their youth players when there's an injury crisis, whereas with Benfica, their aim is to have at least 2 youth players in their squad every single season to get promoted to. Whereas in England, it doesn't really seem that way. And that could be argued, well, there's different expectations on bigger clubs, like we see with Real Madrid. Their youth players in the squad aren't as much as, say, Benfica, because they have to try and win the Champions League, and if they don't really have time to play a 16-year-old in midfield, they need to play Jude Bellingham, Luka Modric, Toni Kroos. And with them, they more buy players like that Endrick from Palmeiras, who are already going to be fantastic players and they don't really have to develop them as much. And that's completely fine, because a team like a Chelsea, it helps them buy players in the future to help them win more trophies, because they can sell a Tammy Abraham for 40 million and a Fikayo Tomori for 30 million, and it helps them against the profit sheet where they can then go out and buy a Caicedo and an Enzo Fernandez. But I think in the purest football terms, I love what Benfica do with their academy, because it seems like they see it as a massive family, and with players that struggle with homesickness, as a lot of young kids will, it's good that they have training centres north and south of the country to help, and it allows them to develop at their own rate, because some players will be completely fine at 10, 11 years old. Some might take till 15, 16 to really come into themselves. But I think a great quote from Pedro Milhomes, who worked as the technical director of the academy, sums it up, basically saying, "We all like to win trophies, but our real trophies, the important ones, are seeing our Florentino, our Antonio Silva, our Goncalo Ramos in the first team. Not just reaching the team, but showing the quality and capacity to stay there for a long period of time. Being able to show they are prepared, they have the quality, the mentality, the performance to be on that next level. When everything happens like that, I can relax on the sofa and say we have accomplished our mission." And that for me is fantastic, because football is about developing young players. It's about developing players, within your area. Because everyone loves, ironically, the Lisbon Lions, the Celtic players who grew up, 10 kilometres from Celtic Park. And it's fantastic to see that. There's nothing wrong with bringing outside players in. But when you can develop young players within your area or your country, I think it's fantastic. And I think Benfica are the best at that. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think the best academy is. I think the Talent Factory, the Benfica one, is the best in my opinion. But you could argue the Dortmund one is fantastic. You could argue Liverpool or Man City's at the moment is doing really well. Ajax always have a fantastic one. PSV at the moment are doing really well with a lot of the products they're putting out. And there's more than one way to skin a cat, as we can see Chelsea are doing. Chelsea have a much larger net within London, and I think they're really aggressive with the players. And it works for them because they've had Mason Mount, Reece James, Conor Gallagher, and they're all doing really well. But in my opinion, Benfica just have the purest and best academy in the world. But thanks for watching this video. If you could leave a like and you could leave a comment, that'd be muchly appreciated. And if you could subscribe, that'd be great. But yeah, see you next time.